All right, thank you, Erica, for starting the recording. Well, we have 1 hour, and for the time's sake, I will get into our topic today. And feel free to keep dropping your greeting messages in the chat. But let's get started. So the topic today is cracking down Amazon behavioral interview. What I plan to cover is first some welcome message, and also let you know who am I, the host for today. And then we'll talk a little bit about the overall process to interview at Amazon. What are the challenges? And then zoom into the behavioral loop and some tactics and tips and takeaways for you to sort of prepare for the behavioral loop. And last but not least, my shameless promotion of my offering on Leland. All right, so let's get started. So who am I? My name is Zen. You can pretty much ignore the H in the spelling, so I just pronounce it Zen. I kind of tag myself as a result-driven leader. I have a PhD in computer science from University of Georgia, a nice university settled in the little university town in Athens, which is 2-hour drive from the metropolitan Atlanta area. And then about 3 years ago, I also earned my MBA from University of Washington, the Foster School of Business. For a long time, I worked in the tech track. I myself was and am still a software engineer. I have worked at Google, Microsoft, and Oracle Research and Development Center before. But in my recent 4 years-ish, I perform as a product manager at Amazon. So here is also one of the quote from one of my mentee before for your reference. So let's get into the meat of today's topic, the Amazon interview. Not so sure how many of you actually know that, but there is actually a website, official Amazon website at amazon.jobs that talks about the Amazon interview process. So I took kind of a screen recording of scrolling that website. So it has everything from like the process to general resources to role-specific resources that could help you every step in the process of interview. So in general, there are 4 steps: online application, then recruiter assessment, basically reviewing your resume for the position you applied for. And then if your resume stands out, you'll get a phone screening most of the time. And if you perform well in the phone screening, usually you get into the interview loop to talk with 3 to 5 Amazonian, usually 4. So this looks like an open book exam, right? Like you have all the resources, like Amazon tells you like what is our interview process and gives you everything you need to prepare for it. So why is it still so hard, right? Or how hard it can be, right? This is because in every step, there are kind of pitfalls that candidates are not always aware. So like for the first step, online application, right? There are thousands of job openings on Amazon.jobs, right? How can you find the right position? Do you know the difference between various roles, right? Such as product manager versus program manager. And if you come from research background, do you know what's the difference between research scientists versus applied scientists versus data scientists, right? So you see a lot of roles. They all seem very similar in terms of job description. But which one is the best that you'll have a chance to win, right? There are a lot of questions here. Obviously, you can try to apply for everything, but then you lost the chance of like really customize your resume, your experience to stand out in that application stage, right? And the second is, it's just the right job for you, right? So we all have different personalities and characteristics. We look for different things for next stage of our career. It's just the position that's going to give you what you are looking for, right? Finally, where do you get all these informations to synthesize and make the right decision, right? And focus your sort of limited energy and resource to the ones that you have the best chance to win and that works for you, that gives you what you're looking for in your next step. So even in the first step, it looks easy. You can fall in all those kind of traps. Assessment. Now you pretty much have targeted position, right? How could you make your resume stand out, right? You have probably a little experience. Then how are you going to put together a resume for an entry-level position? Or you might have a lot of experience. Then which one should you include and emphasize, and which experience you should just brief and left out for a particular position, right? How can you tell your kind of career story so that when the recruiter like reviewing the resume, it comes like a natural that this position that you're applying for is the next position that works for you as a charm, right? So you are the candidate built for this opening. There are a lot of kind of techniques and tips and tricks in building the resume so that it stands out in thousands of resumes that the recruiter get from the application website. Phone screening, usually it's just a 1 hour. Pretty much there will be 10-15 minutes by the end for you to answer question. And then there are like roughly 5 to 10 minutes to get some mutual introduction. So it's a limited time to sort of just present yourself with the best first impression, right? Leave the best and compelling first impression for the phone screener. How to prepare for some kind of initial tech assessment, especially if you are applying for a tech track role like software engineer roles. What if you got stuck at that technical question in the phone screen, right? What are the best questions to ask during that limited time to further sort of evaluate and assess whether the position and the team is the right one for you as the next step. And obviously, the most challenging part of the interview process, right? Even if you get the right position to apply, you survive from the resume assessment and the phone screening, you have a big interview loop facing you where you're going to talk to 4 people, each for 1 hour, right? That's a very intensive and I would say a stressful kind of experience or process. So a lot of you might already know, and at least you've heard of, that this loop is heavily on behavioral questions that targeting assessing the different leadership principles, the Amazon leadership principles. But do you really understand the leadership principle, right? They're very brief. It's just a phrase. So what exactly, when an interviewer say, I'm going to assess the leadership principle X, what exactly is the interviewer looking for, right? Secondly, how are you going to kind of dig deep into your experience? So you have all those nicely written stories or nicely prepared stories for those interviews, because you are going to talk to 4 people, right? And then each of them might assess you for like 2, 3 different leadership principles, right? And for each leadership principle, they might ask you 2 questions. So count that, right? You have a dozen questions, behavioral questions in front of you. Like, how are you going to tell your story? So there's not like you are repeatedly telling one story all the time, but you demonstrate like your experience, you stand out, you give the full of yourself to the interviewer so that they know you, they kind of agree that you are the best candidate for the position, right? Demonstrate the leadership. So for today, we are going to focusing on that last step, although I'm not saying the previous 3 steps is trivial, but given the limited time we have, we are going to focus on the last step, which is the interview loop. And we'll be very specifically focusing on the behavioral questions. So for technical positions, you will also get some technical questions, like for software engineers, you'll get system design questions, you'll get coding questions, data structure or algorithm questions. We'll leave those out as we have limited time. But let's get focused on the behavioral questions and the assessment of leadership principle. So pretty much to crack down this behavioral loop, you need to do 3 things. More or less, you got to do these 3 things all together. Otherwise, it doesn't work very well. First is really understand the leadership principles, right? When the interviewer is assessing you toward a leadership principle, what exact quality that interviewer is looking for? And also, there are different emphasis of leadership principles for different positions. So which ones should you prepare for or focus more or put more effort to prepare for? So let's take a quick look at the leadership principles. I know there are a lot, 14 before, and now there are 16. But the 2 new ones are not being assessed that often, so we can pretty much ignore those. But the leadership principles, pretty much we can group them in 3 categories. The first category are really the leadership principles that guiding the what and why in your work. It includes customer obsession, write a lot, think big, and bias for action. So customer obsession, it is assessing the quality of the candidate who is relentlessly serving customers, internal or external. Notice that the internal customers are also customers. And this is where a lot of software engineers are being assessed against customer obsession. Usually your customer is an internal customer. That could be your manager, that could be your peer product manager, that could be your peer program manager, so on and so forth. Usually seen for mid to senior level, but I'm not excluding the possibility that this will be assessed for an entry-level position. And if your role is facing a lot of stakeholders, then definitely this LP will be assessed in the behavioral loop. Second, I write a lot. This is to assess the candidate's ability to really make good judgment and foster good decision-making process. Usually seen for mid-senior level as well, especially if you are applying for a role involving a lot of critical decision-making, such as program manager and product manager role. Think big, targeting your creativity and your ability to think outside of the box. Again, mid-senior level most commonly will be assessed, but sometimes also entry-level roles. And especially the mid-senior level roles that involving setting and driving visions for a relative big scope. Inspires for action. This is seen across all levels and roles. This is almost like a must-have LP for assess for all positions. This is essentially looking for the candidate's ability to make decisions and move forward quickly under ambiguity, under missing informations, under uncertainty. Okay, the two new ones, as I said, are not assessed that often, so we'll skip those for now. Okay, second category of the LPs. These are really about the how, and the how in terms of solving a problem. So deliver result, right? How is your ability to overcome barriers and all sorts of headwinds that coming to you, but still get things done? Across all levels and roles, this is again almost must-have LP in the behavioral loop. So definitely prepare for it. Ownership. This is actually talking, a lot of people get confused on this, but this is actually assessing your willingness to step up and take ownership and get things done. So it might be work that doesn't fall into any team's plate or anyone's plate. However, it's important to make the project work or get the customer happy, right? So did you take that? Right, so this is the ability or kind of the quality that's being assessed most often when ownership is the LP in the behavioral loop. But sometimes this is also talking about long-term thinking. So you are not kind of just go for the easiest solution, right? You go for the right solution because you own it. You don't say, I just get it down and pass it to someone else. So seen across all levels and roles. And they're, depending on the question being given, it might be assessing a slightly different perspectives. Learn and be curious. Very commonly seen for entry-level roles and the roles that require continued learning to stay up to date. This is about the candidate's willingness and effectiveness to learn. Could you sort of always find materials and resource to understand something and to learn by yourself, right? Or you ask the right question to learn. Invent and simplify. This is about your ability to kind of innovate and solve the problem in some unconventional ways, or again, think outside of the box, right? Usually seen for mid-senior level and usually seen in technical related roles. So if you are interviewing for a software engineer kind of role, then I would say this is potentially a must-have for your loop. Dive deep. Your ability to drill down and drill down effectively. It's not like you just you're just wandering in the details. You sort of have effective feedback loop to let yourself know that you are drilling down the right places and you are getting the effective information to guide for next step. Commonly seen for mid-senior level, but sometimes also in junior level, especially when the position is a tech-related role. The third category of LPs are really the how, but in terms of working with teams or working with others. So these are all talking about how you handle sort of communication, interpersonal situations, cross-team situations. So first, have backbone, disagree, and commit. It's mouthful, but it really looking to assess the candidate's ability to raise their voice in terms of disagreement, but also their willingness to execute once a decision is made against their belief. very commonly seen for mid-senior level across roles, usually not seen in an entry-level position. Earn trust. This is about the candidate's ability to influence without authority. So we work with many people that are not kind of directly in our reporting line, right, or in our reporting chain. And we need to sort of convince people and align people to work on toward the same goal, right? What is a candidate's ability to get that down, right? But sometimes it's also about the owning your own mistakes, like when you made a bad decision, right, or you execute something in a not so effective way. Like, could you recognize that? How do you course correct things, right? To continue be a team player. So the influence without authority aspect is mostly assessed for mid-senior roles, but owning your mistake and course-correcting aspect are also commonly assessed for entry-level positions. So insist on higher standard, candidates' willingness and effectiveness to fix issues, right? Keep raising the bar of quality of something and everything. Commonly seen for mid-senior level, and many times I would say technical related roles. This is also a must-have LP for assessment in the behavioral loop. Hire and develop the best and frugality. These are usually seen for manager roles. So very much related to how you manage the team resources, how you recognize and grow talents, how to be resourceful to get things down when there's limited fundings or limited capacity. All right. So I guess this is a super fast go through of the LPs and how they are mapping to different kind of positions. If you don't remember anything that I just talked about, then remember this slide. The takeaways for preparing your STAR stories, situation, task, action, and result, right? To demonstrate the LP. First, definitely cover the basics. There are a few LPs that are frequently assessed regardless of the levels and the roles. So make sure you have stories prepared for those. The second is you might have noticed, right, and many people have already talked about it, that many of the LPs are contradicting to each other, right? So for example, right, you want to dive deep, but you also want buyers for action, right? So how deep should you dive before you buyers for action and start making decisions and execute on things, right? So you want to make sure that your story is told in a way that the balance is contradicting leadership principles, so you don't sort of showed up to your interviewer as you were super strong on one LP, but ignoring other LPs. The final tip is go extra mile, but purposefully, because we all have very limited bandwidth and capacity to prepare for all those, right? So make sure you prepare for the LPs that particularly matters to the role and the level that you applied, the position that you applied. So that is where you get stand out as well prepared for that specific role. All right, so getting back to our cracking down the behavioral loop, right? Now we understand the LPs and we have the 3 takeaways. Let's get into step 2, which is how you actually come up with the story, right? That you can talk about in the behavioral loop to demonstrate LP. There are at least 2 bias, cognitive bias that I think you'll need to overcome to come up with good story. One is the recency bias, and the other is the hindsight bias. So let's look into that. The first is overcome recency bias. So many of us will have like a very brief line in our resume, and we have many of such kind of brief lines, right? It talks about an action and the result, and probably some impact outcome, right? Drove delivery of XYZ and achieved ABC by working with cross-functional teams, yada, yada, yada. This line itself cannot be a story, right? Because it's too high level. It's not demonstrating the situation, the task, the action, and the result, right? If you talk about that one big deliverable, it will be dry, and it's not going to show your sort of your way of working, right? So this is where a coach sort of come in and help you dig out the details, which you most likely are kind of buried deep in your memory, and you want sort of think of it as a good story for telling in the behavioral loop. So usually, but even if you don't have a coach, you can ask yourself these questions. First is, what did you do day to day, right? In that process of drive the delivery of XYZ, right? Is there any artifacts that you generated? If you overcome headwinds and uncertainties, then that's delivery result, right? And buyers for action, right? Was there any brilliant ideas in the process of driving X, Y, and Z, right? That could be something for a story for Think Big, right? Those are not written in your resume, but those are good stories to tell in the behavioral loop. Did you push back on any defects or rush to launch something that can demonstrate your insist on highest standard, right? Then whom did you work with day in, day out, right? Was there any disagreement that you resolve, you get teams aligned on, so on and so forth? Those are good stories to demonstrate untrust, have backbone, disagree, and commit. Was there any work that you picked up anyway? Like no one's taking that, so you take it, you make sure everything worked together toward the final goal. Ownership, showing your customer obsession, right? So these are the little stories that you will not write in your resume, because if you write those in your resume will be like 20 pages. But these are the stories that you actually want to tell. Where did you spend your time, right? Was there anything you finally figured out that take some time? That shows your dive deep, right? Learn and be curious. Did you take any innovative approach to solve a problem? Invent and simplify, right? Ooh, okay. Second hindsight, hindsight bias, right? We are all human beings, and we tend to forget how hard a thing was because it always seems easy after we solve the problem, right? So this is a kind of cartoon. You start with like a big rock. You want to move that big rock. It's so hard. Then you start break it down, right? Piece by piece, you figure it out. And finally, you lie down on a peaceful sand beach, right? And at that time, you pretty much forget like how big and how intimidating that rock was at the beginning, right? So you start to like feel like, yeah, I didn't really do anything that significant, right? I don't really have a good story to tell. And I've seen this like many times with my mentees. I give one example. So one of my mentee just wrote one line in his resume, say, I implemented blah, blah, blah with NVIDIA Jetson. And I'm like, I'm not very familiar with NVIDIA Jetson. It seems to be something that you can talk about more. Like that could be a good place. You can dig out a lot of story. He's like, I don't think so. It's not. It's not that. Yeah, it's just. Yeah, it's just edge AI stuff. I'm like, man, it's edge AI stuff, right? So I looked up online myself. I'm like, this is the NVIDIA Jetson, like a stack framework, right? It involves all these things. I'm like, this is not trivial. Like, tell me more about like from the start. Like, do you know that before, right? Oh, he didn't know that before. Like, I'm like, then how did you figure it out? He's like, oh, I go to the forums, the developed forums. And then I look at these documents, those documents. I'm like, oh, there are a ton of learn and be curious, right? Dive deep and bias for action and deliver result, right? So it kind of helped him to dig out like at least a handful of stories to demonstrate the LPs, right? But that's all one line in his resume. So it's very important that you tend to forget how hard it is, right? And what all you did to sort of make it easy, like seems natural by the end of the process. And you need someone, a coach or someone who don't know this whole thing to walk with you, like almost like re-experience your problem-solving process, and then sort of rework that process and dig out the stories along the line. All right. Finally, the third step to crack down the behavioral loop, right? Now you understand the LPs. You've done a thorough in and out examination of your resume, digged into your past experience. You looked at almost every single line and single word in your resume to figure out the what, the who, and the why back then, right? You think you have a bunch of good stories, you putting them together in the STAR format, talking about what was the situation back then, what was the task that you are facing, what actions you take, and what was the result. And then you go iterative on that STAR story again and again in the writing format, right? Until you feel like, yeah, that's a good story to tell about one or multiple leadership principles. And you feel like, yes, I'm probably ready for the behavioral loop. Not there yet. There's a third step, which is to show your best in the fly. This in the fly part can be tricky because in the behavioral loop, the interviewer will not tell you like which LP I'm assessing you right? By asking a question. All you get is the question itself, right? So you need to think sort of in a fly, like which LP is this question assessing, right? I have multiple potentially stories to tell. Which one is the best to tell, right? And how I kind of do some last minute customization and kind of pamper on the stories so that it appears like the exact thing that answer the question that I just heard, right? And how to stay confident when you encounter some unexpected follow-up, right? So I don't have the much other than the old saying, practice makes it perfect, right? This is where you got to practice and practice and practice. But still, there are a few tips to remember when you're practicing your behavioral loop in like a mock interview setting. First tip is you can actually ask for like a 15 to 20-second pause after hearing a behavioral question. In that pause, you think about what is the LP that this interviewer is assessing by asking the question, right? And then you look at all the stories that you have for potential LPs that the interviewer is assessing. Probably some of the stories you've already told to some other interviewers, and you try to avoid like repeating one story too much. So no more than twice, I would say, all right? And then you think about how you tailor. Once you selected your story to tell, you think a little bit about how to tailor it so that it answers the question that you just heard. Tip number 2 is actually you can have one experience tailored for multiple questions. So when you're writing your STAR story, you can have one story written in multiple different ways. You tell it in different ways so that it's catering for a specific LP, right? So again, the NVIDIA Jetson example that I just gave. You can tailor it for dive deep. You can tailor it for learn and be curious, right? You can tailor it for deliver result. So many different flavors that you can get out of one story. But try not to tell similar story over and over again in the loop. Because by end of the day, all those 4 or 5 interviewers, they will reconvene in a debrief loop. They will talk about what are the stories they heard and how do they assess your demonstration of leadership principles, given the stories that they heard, right? And if at that time it seems there are only 2-3 stories being repeatedly told over the entire loop, it's not too good. Tip number 3 is regarding the follow-up questions, because this is the wild card, right? You can hardly practice for those like beforehand. But usually the follow-up questions come up because of 2 things. One is that you didn't provide enough clarity in some of the details of your story. So the interviewer, for sake of taking comprehensive verbal note so that in the debrief session, they can really talk about their assessment with confidence. They want to capture those details in their notes. And so they are just asking a clarification question. So in such case, you just want to provide as succinct and clear answer to give the detail. But there could be also another case, which is your story is actually probably mismatched with the LP that they are trying to assess, right? So they are trying to follow up using the follow-up question of your story to dig if there are additional data point to support the LP that they are actually assessing. So in that sense, you will need to sort of in the fly tailor your story a little bit or pull in more details like around that story to give the data point that the interviewer is aiming to collect. So this is an artful process. Again, practice makes it perfect. Tip number 4, and also the final tip, make your introduction powerful. Usually that comes at the beginning of each loop, right? The interviewer will come in and ask you to do a quick introduction. And when they say quick, they really mean it because there are a lot of behavioral questions are waiting for them to ask and assess with you, right? So make your introduction powerful, but really short. So you have enough time to demonstrate your qualities. As an interviewer, I have seen many times, like when I say, give me a quick introduction of yourself, and then the candidate talks about themselves for 10 minutes. That's not good because it's actually eating into your time to tell your STAR stories later on that actually give the data point for the interviewer to talk about how you meet the bar or raise the bar of certain LP. So do the introduction powerfully but short, so you get enough time to demonstrate your qualities using the STAR stories. And at the end, you can also ask some important questions because the loop is I would say, the best kind of for you to really talk to someone that's working on the team of the position that you are applying for. All right, I think I'm a little bit rushed through my contents. But now it's my offering page and pretty much, yeah, the last one in my deck. I will leave it there, but probably we can use this next 15 minutes for any questions.
I had a question about the two different packages that you have. What's the difference between the SWE track and the PM track? Is that two different like positions or two different departments?
Yeah, so the SWE track is specifically designed for software engineers. The PM track is more designed for the product and program management kind of roles. So these are, if you're targeting different positions, then these are the different packages for these two track of roles. So the SWE track is more emphasizing on the technical aspect. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so how many questions does interviewer in a loop usually ask? I would say usually each interviewer has 2 to 3 LP to assess, and how many questions they ask depending on how fast they can collect sufficient data point to give the assessment of the LP. So say if I am tasked to assess bias for action, deliver result, right? And then say dive deep. I might prepare 3 questions for each. But if I ask the first question, you give me a strong story, I have all good data point, I would say this LP, I'm down. I'm not going to ask the second question, right? But yeah, if your first story doesn't really work, I really try to collect good data point, right? So I might ask a second question. Yeah, so it's pretty much, if you are getting a lot of questions, then you sort of sense that your previous stories are not meeting what the interviewer is looking for. Yeah. And yeah, what should a good introduction include and how long is quick? A good introduction should be a very a brief cap of your most standing out experience and why you are the perfect candidate for the position you are applying for. And when I say quick, I mean really 3 and no more than 5 minutes. So target a 3-minute one, but if the interviewer asks like 1, 2 follow-up question on your experience, it might in total take like 5, 6 minutes. Yeah, specific star story example, there are a lot online. I would suggest you use search, and these days there are also large language models that are doing pretty well on these. I would say the format is actually less important because the meat is actually the story, because you can't just be star without the story, right? So it is really about digging into your past experience, find a story, and then form it in the star format. So the star format is not the hard part, as I usually see. Having a good story that speaks towards certain LP is the more challenging part.
Hey Zen, I actually have a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I tried raising my hand, but for some reason my Zoom wasn't allowing me to do so. But yeah, so when you're mentioning these stars, right? So can I use one specific story to hit like multiple LPs?
You can. Yes,
Okay, but is that advisable though?
you can use one story for multiple LP, right? But then you are risking to tell one story repeatedly
Gotcha.
to many interviewers in your loop, right? And when they reconvene and debrief, they will say, "Oh, all this candidate told us is about this one thing. There's nothing else." So,
Got it.
so
Yeah.
that's not good, right? So yes. So you
Awesome.
need to
Thank
be
you.
a little bit strategic. Like you might want to have a handful of story that
Mhm.
target the 14 LP, and then you selectively tell and try to balance it, cross out the loop. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, how to answer specific behavioral question. This is very hard to answer without knowing your experience, because it's all about how you tailor your experience to answer this. But I can tell you that, tell me about when you had to work with difficult stakeholders. This is the question assessing your untrust kind of LP. So think about it from that angle. Is there any package related to data analytics or data scientist roles? Because I don't have personally experience working as data scientist. I work closely with data scientists, so I didn't offer that package. But I would say these are more similar to the SweetTrack, the technical role, like the heavily technical role. So if you want to explore, I would recommend you use the SweetTrack package. What if I've never had a project from A to Z, only technical aspect? How to use numbers using stars when, for example, we don't have the budgets. I didn't really capture the second part of the second question. But I don't think anyone has like a whole lot of experience working on a project from A to Z, right? Most commonly, we just sort of work on one part of a project or one aspect of a project, right? Like if I'm a PM, I'm not going to write code for a deliverable, right? Or if I'm a software engineer, I'm not going to define like what is the feature we are going to build, right? So I like almost no one work like inside out of a project, right? You always collaborate with others. But the point is you need to find out from the part that you worked on, right? And dig out the stories, right? So, okay, you were given a feature to implement, like, but there are restriction A, B, C, D, right? And then there are new technologies, X, Y, Z that you need to explore, right? What did you do there? And then you say, okay, I demonstrate these LPs to deliver result. Or you're a product manager, right? You're given this ambitious KPI to hit, revenue KPI to hit, right? And then you have this super constrained engineering capacity to use, right? How you kind of invent and simplify or be resourceful, right, to leverage additional resources, how you convince the different stakeholders to do things so that you can deliver on the KPI, right? But you're not actually doing those things yourself, right? So there's always different aspect that we work on the project. It's all about how you dig out the stories in the piece that you worked on. Okay. Yes, definitely start and to be honest, I think many of the behavioral standard are kind of model after the Amazon behavioral interview. So if you kind of crack down and master the Amazon behavioral loop, then pretty much you can handle any other behavioral interviews. Yeah, how long in minutes should each story be? This is also tricky. So I would say pretty much do like a 5-minute initial version, no more than 5 minutes. but that 5 minutes should cover the entire star, right? And you might, because after you hear the question, you will tailor your story a little bit so it actually answer the question, right? You don't just go out and tell your story again in the same way, like regardless of the question, right? You still need to answer the question. So you might tailor it and leave some details out from the initial 5-minute telling of the story. And then this is where like there might be follow-up come in, and you need to judge in the fly on what is the specific details that you potentially left out, but the interviewer is seeking, and you feed them the right the right data that they need. So I would say the initial presentation of the star story is probably 5-6 minutes, and then there will be follow-up for another like 3 to 5 minutes. So in total, like a question, you try to sort of come over it within 10 minutes, because it's a 1 hour one hour loop, right? And usually each interviewer will assess 2 to 3 LPs. It's very rare that a candidate can hit all the aspect of an LP like with only one story and one question. So in total, you might get like 4 to 5 questions, usually 4-ish question. So 10 minutes each, that's 40 minutes, right? Plus your intro, 5 minutes, and then 10 minutes at the end for question, like the reverse question. Then you have 5-minute buffer. So you you do the math, right? Okay. Okay, what kind of questions should we focus on asking back to our interview? Yeah, this is again a very it need to be very strategic, and it's very position and position specific, and your own kind of career trajectories specific. Because in those reverse questioning time, all you want to find out, that the nutshell is you want to find out, is this the right position for you, right? So it's very specific to the actual position that you are interviewing for, and also what you are looking for as the next step in your career. Yeah, how does this work for first-time job seekers? I think it's still the same principle, but what the first-time job seeker need to adjust for is really digging into their school experience. So I have mentees who are like senior or graduating, rising senior to the actual senior that are graduating and looking for the first job. So it's very important about like digging into your school projects, digging into your achievements, awards, and other activities in school. Probably you've done some internship. How could you sort of talk about the stories happening in your internship? So I would say the principle is the same, but the places that you are going to dig and the way that you're digging it might vary a little bit because it's the first time you don't have yet a full-time employment experience. Do the stories have to be pertinent to the experience on your resume, or can you also give stories? Yes, you can also give stories not on your resume. The only sort of caveat is then you might risk using more time to provide the context, right? So you try to sort because in your resume and in your self-introduction, you've already paved quite some context about where you are, what's your previous experience. And if you try to tell a story that's totally outside of that, then you need to repave the context for that story. So yes, obviously you can, but you need to sort of do the calculation on the fly. And By the way, if this is a good story to be told for the interview of that position, then it's supposed to be a good experience to write on your resume as well. So if you find such mismatch, then it tells me that you probably did something not sort of ultimately optimized, like you either not optimized your resume or you not optimized your interview loop. All right, let me see. For intern roles, do you think all of the LPs will be asked? But definitely not all. Like think about you will have a loop of like 4 people. Each of them might assess like 2 and 3, and some of the LPs will be repeatedly assessed by say 2 of them. So I would say definitely prepare for like 5, 6 core LPs that will absolutely come up in the intern role, depending on whether it's a technical role or some other role, right? This intern role. And then you probably want 1 or 2 that's particularly kind of commonly assessed for that track. So definitely don't prepare for all, like no one can prepare for all, but you want to sort of use the limited time to be best prepared for the LPs that are most commonly assessed for a role. If we come up with 5 generic stories, do you think it is advisable to tailor those for each LP, like all stories highlighting each LP in a way? Yes, this is one of the efficient way to prepare for these. So I think you want to probably not even 5, you want to probably have 3, 4 different experience, right? That you can dig story out. And then in these 3, 4 experience, like probably each you can dig out 1, 2 story. And then for each story, you might target like 1, 2 LP, depending on how you tell it. And I think that's that will be a pretty comprehensive preparation for the behavioral loop. Okay. I think we are at the time. I know we have a lot of questions that we haven't yet got chance to cover. But unfortunately, we are at time. Feel free to come to my Leland profile and send me a free connect, and then book one session with me. We can talk more about the specific questions and how it works for you, the individualized cracking down behavioral interview loop. Yep. Thank you, Erica.